Hello, Radio Maria Canada. Here in the city of Toronto, we have with us Father Stephen from the Diocese of Peterborough. And so I'm going to let us go and let us speak about priesthood. Father Stephen, you know, your patron saint spoke against the temple. Remember?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And he got killed because he spoke against the temple. You know, at that time, Christianity was divided between the Hellenists that somehow followed Jesus against the ones that more close to Judaism, like Peter and John. They were still going to the temple, although Jesus was somehow against the temple. And the Hellenists, and the first persecution of Jerusalem, and the Hellenists got persecuted. And even say the Acts of the Apostles says that the apostles remained, so they were not persecuted. So you are from the Diocese of Peterborough, and I'm going to be tough with you. Well, I'm a priest like you for 39 years. But I'm also a religious priest. I belong to the Consulate of Missionaries. And I am three things. So it's like a Trinitarian vocation. And the first for me, it's the most important thing is the mission. That's the first thing. The second, religious life. And the third would be the priesthood. So how do you see a priest in modern life? I will have other questions to help, because it's a vocation. It looks like it is in crisis. Just for you to give you an example, my parish priest has 5 villages. Let us say 50 years ago, each of these 5 villages had a priest. Now is a priest for 5 villages. And that's Europe, that's Portugal. And wherever you go, here looks like there is lots of clergy, but it's imported clergy. It's not local clergy. So how do you see this crisis?
Yeah, I think the one thing to kind of keep in mind, because I study a lot of history in the seminary, and I like reading into history. Sure. And one thing we have to kind of, 2 extremes to avoid. One, to stop thinking that the past was terrible. We hate the past. The other extreme is to think that the past was wonderful. Like, look at all these priests we had back in the day. Look at each village had its own priest. Now it's every 5 villages with 1 priest. And not to say that nowadays that there are no issues. Of course there are. You just have to turn on the news and see that. But I think one thing we have to also kind of keep in mind that but ever since the fall of Adam and Eve, we've always been in crisis. There's always been sinfulness in the world. And even if you look at the crisis in the medieval times, they had conflicts between the church and the state, the investiture controversy, like who has the right to appoint bishops, and that was quite the controversy in those days. But that's the past. This is now. I think we wanted to not fall into the trap of thinking the past was perfect because of this, because they had to deal with their own crisis back then. Sure. But we are dealing with kind of a numbers crisis. We have to import clergy from overseas. If I look at my home diocese of Peterborough, I'm local to the diocese. I was born and raised in Peterborough and became a priest there. Most of our clergy are from outside the diocese. Many of them are from outside the country, outside the continent. Yeah, they're from a lot from India, a lot from Philippines, a lot from Nigeria.
I knew the Angelis. 20
years
ago,
yes.
He was a friend of mine. Yeah,
for sure. Yes, Bishop De Angelis. God rest his soul. He was a bishop of Peterborough for 12, 13 years. Oh. Yeah, so he was one of I knew him. He was the one that actually accepted me into the seminary.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So I knew him fairly well. A very, very nice man. He was a missionary and a religious as well.
He wanted to take me to Peterborough.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't go.
So when I look back at my own story in Peterborough, it's actually from a parish that was run by religious who are from Poland, Polish Franciscans. Yes, they're no longer in the diocese because of shrinking numbers. They had to be moved elsewhere. But we do have to have import clergy, and one thing we have to remember is that, despite them being from overseas, they're still priests, they're still human beings, and they bring a perspective that's different from North American life. Yeah, without foreign clergy, my diocese will be really strapped for priests. Yeah, it's even some of our Canadian-born clergy are not from the Peterborough area. There are a few from like Toronto or Ottawa, and they just happen to come to Peterborough. So it's but it is a challenge when it comes to promoting vocations. So for those who don't know, I'm the director of vocations for the diocese. I'm also director of youth ministry, and when it comes to promoting vocations, you have to kind of avoid comparing ourselves to Toronto, which has like all these guys in the seminary. Whereas we have 2 seminarians, and I'm working on it.
But your seminarians come to Toronto.
They come to Toronto, yes. Yeah, St. Augustine's. Yeah, they study here, as did I as well.
Did you have any ordinations this year?
We have 2 ordinations coming up. We have Mr. Deacon Edmund Monroe Scott, who's going to be ordained to the priesthood at end of May. He is a convert from the Anglican Church. He was an Anglican priest, so because of this pastoral provision, or is a version of it by St. John Paul II, he's been ordained a priest for the Peterborough Diocese. And we're also preparing for a transitional diaconal ordination on May 15th of Mr. Peter Bisnet. That will be happening in St. Michael's Parish in Coburg, 1 p.m., June 15th, and then the priest ordinations happen on May 31st at 7 p.m., Cathedral of St. Peter in Chains in Peterborough. So then we have one other fellow in the seminary, and he's going into 3rd year theology.
Okay, so how many years of theology do you study?
It's typically, how do you, 4 academic years, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year theology. There's a year of pastoral internship. So while we're preparing for ordination, we spend a year in a parish under the direction of a pastor. And you do so in your home diocese. So like Toronto guys who go to a Toronto Archdiocese parish, Hamilton go to a Hamilton parish, Peterborough to a Peterborough parish, Peterborough diocese, because my diocese is huge. It's a massive diocese. So when I went on internship in 2015, 2016, I was sent to St. Joseph's Parish in Bowmanville, which is about a 15-minute drive east of Oshawa. Yeah, and we do that. Then there's a spiritual year, or a pastoral year. Oh, sorry, not pastoral year, but a propedeutic year. I did that as well. That's at St. Augustine's itself, and also how much philosophy you take will depend on the candidate. I did 3 years of philosophy.
And 3 years of theology.
4 years of theology,
4 years
plus
of
2 years, 1 year of spiritual year and 1 year of internship. So in total, that was about 7, 8. Well, it depends how you look at it. Like when I was studying, I was doing my undergrad in philosophy, so that's considered a college level seminary. So in terms of major seminary, which the seminary that provides you more direct formation for the priesthood, I was started at spiritual year, so that would have been 6 years. But I had a year of discernment with my diocese before that.
So what I was saying is, and I would like your opinion on the future of the church. Sometimes I say, I use this expression many times, we the priests, we are an endangered species. Endangered species meaning that like species, they disappear. But of course, priests will never disappear. But it might change. It might change shape. And in my changing, as a missionary, and also the sister was speaking, like there is a mission and there are 20 chapels. Now, what the Eucharist is more important than the priest. It's the Eucharist that makes the priest, not the priest that makes the Eucharist. As a matter of fact, you can be a holy priest and a bad priest, but the Eucharist is still the same.
For sure.
So, Christians have the right to the Eucharist, to celebrate the memory of Jesus. And there are many Christian communities that they don't have a priest to celebrate the Eucharist. I can tell you, the Catholic Church has been in Ethiopia, where I was as a missionary, right from the beginning, even right from the times of that eunuch. So the church was there. And yet, we are 0.5 of the population. And the Protestants are 2.5 of the population. Of course, the rest, they are Muslims and and Coptic, Orthodox Coptic. But why the Protestants multiply so easily and we don't? Because we have communities, we establish communities, but then we don't have pastors for those communities. As a matter of fact, in the missions, the catechist becomes like the pastor because he does funerals, he does baptisms because that's this in urgency, he does baptism because we are too far away, we are not there. So this brought me to the early times of the church, presbytery, the elders. You know, at that time, and we have just read today in this reading, the first reading, Paul is saying goodbye to the Christians of Ephesus, and he's called the elders. He never says elder. Each community has more than one. And that reminds me of the Orthodox priesthood, which is in Ethiopia, in the Coptic Church, you don't have a priest celebrating you with the Eucharist. You have 3 or 4 or 5. So elders, not elder. So it's like the priesthood is diluted in different persons, not concentrated in just one. And so the elders, and he called the elders and he gives them advice and before he goes away. So Paul and the other apostles, they go here and there, they found communities. And then if there is a community, then there has to be elders. The elders that are the most mature psychologically, I believe, and the most holy, and those that there is even a list of things that they should be, as St. Paul described them. But so if there is a Christian community, there are elders that spring up from that community to that community. What we have after that the first times, we have Constantine Church. We have a church that becomes a power, and we have the priesthood that becomes clergy, the priesthood that becomes like a blue blood, like that in the Middle Ages even becomes a caste, a class, the clergy, the nobles, and the people. And that's the priesthood we are still having. For how long can we have that sort of priesthood? Shouldn't we, or won't we be forced to go back to the priesthood of the early churches? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a very good question and a very interesting topic to discuss. It brings up this idea of the priest and his personality, and because when you encounter a priest, he's a human being, although he's ordained, has divine powers. He still has a personality, and sometimes we can see happen, intentionally or not, is that community is centered around a particular priest and his personality. He's a people person. He's very popular. He's a good homilist, and visits the people and all these things. And when you see when we change pastors, all of a sudden, like, the dynamics change, and
the people follow
him. Yeah, I've seen it happen a lot of times in different dioceses and all over.
Well, that used to be more Protestant-like. That's for me. I am very much against it, because then you are using the gospel to become, because the gospel is the most beautiful narrative of all times. Then you are using that narrative that captivates people, but you captivate people not for the gospel but for yourself. And you see that, and some for money. We see that in Protestant churches.
Of course,
we are starting to see that even in the Catholic Church.
Exactly, yeah. And I think we need to rediscover the theology of the priesthood, or the vow of the priesthood, that despite who the man is personally, he still acts as alter Christus, as the other Christ. And you may not like a particular priest as a person for his personality, but he's still celebrating the Eucharist at the altar. He's providing you Christ. We go to him for confession. He's absolving your sins just as much as Padre Pio would. Like, there's a story. Someone was waiting in line for Padre Pio's confessional, and then Padre had to cut off the line, and as he was leaving, a man said, "Oh, sorry, Father, can you hear my confession?" And Padre Pio was like, "Just go to Father so and so. It's the same thing." Yeah, it's the same sacrament, it's the same thing. you might be a little more disposed with one guy, but it's still the same sacrament. We need to rediscover that objectivity when it comes to the priesthood. You know, subjectivity is an important matter because they taught us in seminary, you have to be bridges for Christ, not obstacles. You know, yeah, the priest should refine his personality and personal traits in such a way that he doesn't repel people, like if he's not mean or he can like preach somewhat coherently. But in the end of the day, we still need to rediscover the fact that regardless of Father Jim, Father Bob, Father Steve, Father Gary, it's all the same Father priesthood. It's still the same priesthood, and we should rediscover that fact that we go to Mass not because of the priest, but because of Jesus, because of the sacraments. Yeah, like I get it. There could be reasons to move from one parish to another, legitimate and that, but for the most part, we should not be doing that. So we should still realize that our parish is our home, and we go there for Christ. You don't go there for the priests. And I heard this from lay people when various scandals come up, in the news and all that, and they say, I don't go to church for the priest. I go to the priest for Jesus. And that's good. Yeah. Not to minimize the scandals, but to remind us that we don't go to Mass for the people, and that includes the people in the congregation as well.
Look at the 12.
Look at the 12. Yes.
Where they saints.
Starting
with Peter. Oh.
Yeah. Peter denied our Lord not once, not twice, but 3 times he denied. Yeah.
And the other delivered them. So.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah. It's but yet they became great saints despite their faults and their shortcomings.
Okay, so now, of course, the personal question, which is, for me, at the age of 6, I wanted to be what I am now. So I am not an example to anybody, especially for modern times. You don't. At my time, there were minor seminaries, so you grew up, which we gave up the minor seminaries. I just want your opinion on this, but we gave up the minor seminaries. But the football schools, they haven't. You know the football schools, and I know some football schools in Portugal and the whole Europe. The football, you learn it in school. So the clubs, the big clubs, they have a school. They have a primary school and an elementary school and a high school. And it's like a college. You go there and you live there, and you play soccer every day. Every day you play, and so the very same school that you have outside is that one. And you go to, sometimes you visit your family, but you are there just for football. And of course you learn all the subjects like any kid outside. So you see, these clubs, they believe in Ronaldo was born in one of those schools. Messi comes from one of those schools. They were born into football at very early. And they were playing football every day. And they were plus studying the whole subjects like everybody else. So why did we stop doing that with the minor seminaries? Why did we?
Yeah, I'm really not too sure about that, and I don't know what the situation was in Europe. I guess there were a lot of them, and I know in countries like Nigeria they still have them, and
they still have them.
And there's one in Canada in British Columbia run by the Benedictines. Yeah, it's on the west coast, but for the most part, I don't think there are too many minor seminaries around. I know of one in the United States, maybe 2, but. In general, boarding schools, this is my opinion, in general, boarding schools in Canada don't work out very well. They're fairly expensive, and I don't think kids like to go to boarding schools. I think there are some, but I'm not sure. We have 0 boarding schools in Peterborough. Like absolutely none.
Seminary would be like a boarding school.
Something like that, yeah. So I'm familiar with these minor seminaries, and for those who are listening, I don't know what it is. We're talking about these basically boarding schools for boys that boys would go there, and they're considered seminaries because they're preparing them for priesthood.
Yeah, sure.
But it was done in such a way that they weren't starting their major formation; they were the minor seminary. So they're basically receiving a good Christian formation and a good Christian spirituality, and basically it would serve as establishing the building blocks of Christian life, which hopefully inspired them to the priesthood.
Yeah, even at my time. The only condition that you can be here is that you don't exclude the vocation to the priesthood and to missionary life, because I was a missionary seminary. So as long as you don't exclude that, you can be here. It's not that you are already sure at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, for sure. Very few people are sure at that age. Even if they are young and you think of priesthood, they're still not quite sure exactly, like myself.
But that was the idea. If you exclude it, then live, go ahead.
For sure, yeah.
But if you still include it, then you can be here. And the latest years, we were going to a normal high school. We were only leaving the seminary, but the school, most of the day we were in this normal high school with other kids. But anyway, that's not your case. That's something probably of the past. Although, as I say, the big soccer clubs, they still believe in it, and they observe it. They have those schools. They don't give them up. But anyway, those
for sure, yeah, and also we can't quite repeat the past, but it does not mean we can't learn from the past as well.
Sure,
and the way I look at it, going forward, at least as a situation here in Canada, it's a good thing to look at the faith formation of young people. Maybe not in like a boarding school, but maybe in parishes. Like I'm director of youth ministry for the Peterborough Diocese. And parish youth programs are very important for the faith development of young people. Also, which school they go to as well. Like I'm also chaplain of Our Lady of the Wayside Catholic School.
Okay.
It's a private Catholic school in Peterborough under the classical tradition. And basically how it works, classical education is a whole thing to describe there. But basically, Catholic classical education is aimed at
the closest
thing. Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's not a boarding school; kids don't live there. But the boys and girls are there.
It's more Catholic than the Catholic system that we have here, and some even say that is once the government pays, the government establishes the rules.
For sure, yes, and we have the freedom to. Direct our curriculum and to aim at not just the academic formation of the kids, which is pretty good. Like you got kids in high school reading Divine Comedy, Dante.
Okay,
yes, you got that. And then you also aim at the spiritual formation, the personal formation of the young people. Like for example, we have daily mass at the school. And I go there for daily mass.
So
and
that's a
they're
seminary.
They're into it. Yeah,
it's
kind of like that.
Seminary.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because then at older age, some kids, they are already brainwashed by the world. That it's very difficult unless they come to something like Paul, that you fall from your horse. Unless they come to certain crisis of that, or that you think about that. What's the meaning of all this? But very few do. And so, but this school would be the place, and
for
it's
sure,
good that you are the chaplain, so that you follow those kids even personally.
For sure, yes, and I see a lot of good things happening there. Like at the daily mass, they're all singing the entrance hymn, and they're all singing communion hymn and the concluding hymn. And kids do the readings, and it's they're paying attention, they're praying along, and a lot will come kneel for communion. As well, most come for communion. It depends. So it's early in the morning. Sometimes they have to eat breakfast. You don't want to get fainting. So
but that's farming vocation
for sure. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and on Thursdays we have adoration. So each class comes for adoration in chapel. We have confessions, and I can be pretty busy with confessions. I look forward to when the grade 1, 2s come because they're too young. But when they're in the chapel, I get a little bit of a break, and then all of a sudden the 3, 4s come, and then I'm busy again. So
because at least I don't know in Peterborough, but when you go to parishes here in Toronto, well, young people, a parish that has a youth group is a very rare thing. And the families, you visit families. When I enter, I know if the family is practicing Catholic or not. When I enter the house and I don't see a picture of our Blessed Mother and the crucifix here and there, I see nothing, then forget about it. Because those are references that help you. To have a picture, a crucifix on the wall, it helps you indirectly, even unknowingly it helps you. When you see no reference and you see other sorts of arts, then
For sure, for sure. You also see it sometimes in the Catholic schools. Like there are good teachers in the public Catholic system, of course. That I know the director of education in the local school board is a very solid guy. He was my parishioner when I was in parish ministry as pastor. There are good people there, but once I walked into a classroom at a different school, and I looked around, there was no crucifix in the classroom. There were all sorts of other things, but no crucifix. And
so that's a public school, but why would I send my kids to a school that is called Catholic, but is exactly the same as the public?
For sure.
So
yes,
so you are lucky to have that school. Somebody from that school already came here to somehow advertise this, because this system is coming up, the really Catholic schools, not the ones that belong to the Catholic school board. That some of them are not really Catholic, and they go all together with this gender, and they have to put up the flag, you know.
For sure, yeah.
So about your vocation, how did you come to know that God was calling you to the priesthood?
Okay, yeah. So I grew up. I was born and raised in Peterborough, and I'm from Sacred Heart Parish in Peterborough. So I was baptized there. I have all my sacraments at my priesthood ordination there. I grew up in a Catholic family. I'm the oldest of two boys, so my younger brother was born when I was 15 years old. So there's an age gap between us. Yeah. It's fine now, but it's, you know, when it first happens, it's kind of like different. You're a teenager by then, but we just grew up Catholic, and at my parish, as I was saying earlier, there were Polish Franciscans there, and I saw them around. There were a couple of them, so you got to see more than one priest. So the one who baptized me, he's deceased now. Otherwise, he'd be well into his 90s. Yeah. There's a funny story with my baptism. It was in the 80s, so I won't say when I was born exactly, but in the 80s. My family was getting ready to have me baptized at the church, and back then the pastor did it between masses. We had English mass, a Polish mass, and then another English mass. So I think it was between like English and Polish, or Polish and English, I'm not sure. So we're waiting for my godmother and her sister to come out. In the 80s, women did hairspray, so their hairs were huge, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting for them to come out, and they must have killed like 3 bottles of hairspray that day. So and then we come out, and we come to the church. And in the church, apparently there was another child to be baptized, and so again, I'm a baby. I don't remember this. I'm told the story. Sure.